Hey everybody, it's Brent. Welcome to episode 5 of Having Had Podcast. We had all the technical difficulties with this one, so I'm jumping on here early to say this. Had a little bit of a latency issue, which just means there's a slight delay and we talked over each other some. I think I cleaned up most of it. Towards the end of the episode, we also have a couple of edits where we had to come back in a few days later and re-record some things. I don't think any of this will stop you from enjoying the episode. Some good stories and great memories, good conversation with an old friend that I spent a lot of days on the road with. So please enjoy. Go to Having Had Podcast on Instagram and follow. That's where I do all my updates, and wherever you're listening to this, please just mash all the buttons. Like, subscribe, leave comments, whatever. It all helps me out. Thank you guys very much, and I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to Having Had Podcast, episode 5. 5, yeah, already. When I had the inspiration to start this, I've said already, you don't make it to this age without making some connections and some friendships. And so in the days after I had the inspiration to do this, I low-key started just picking up the phone and calling some people I had not talked to in a while. And it was as much for me to kind of test my idea or theory that, there are people that even if I haven't talked to them in, a number of years, that we would pick up right where we left off and still share the same closeness. And hopefully this was my idea, and people listening, even if they're not in the music business or film business, they just hear the connection that I have with people, the things that I was able to connect on, whether it was experiences, the job we did, working together, whatever it was. And if you're hearing us have a conversation and rekindling a connection in some cases, that maybe you might be inspired to pick up the phone and call people in your life that you haven't talked to for a while and reconnect and make that connection. So that is the kind of good that I hope to put out there by doing this. And my guest today is a guy that I picked up the phone and called that week. And it proved my theory true. Without him knowing it, I didn't even mention the podcast that day, I don't think. But it was proof positive to me that, yeah, he was one of several that I reached out to. So today's guest is Ian Keith. He was on the other side of the stage from me doing the same job for, five plus years with Sevendust.
Almost 5 years, yeah, I think.
And he is a career guitar technician that has worked for a laundry list of bands that we will get to across multiple genres, and a great friend. So welcome, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
To get started, I ask everybody this to get rolling out of the gate, just kind of get going. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up?
I was born in Colorado Springs. I lived there till I was about four and a half. Then I moved to Toledo, Ohio, and I lived there until I was 25. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, right on the Michigan-Ohio border. Then I moved to Phoenix for 6 years, and then back to Toledo when my mother passed away, and then moved to Indianapolis, where I live now, in 2005. And I've been here ever since, when I'm home.
Were you a good kid? Did you get in trouble a lot?
When I was young, I didn't get in trouble. I became a punk kid when I got into puberty, I guess. I was latch door kid, so hanging out with the wrong crowd and trying things, and whatever you do when you're left unsupervised and a young lad in the suburbs. So yes and no.
Yes and no. Any childhood heroes?
I was thinking about that. I think you said it. Evel Knievel, obviously. For our
We're the
age,
same age. Yeah.
for our age, there was nobody cooler than Evil Knievel, because he was, the real deal. He did all that. There was no camera tricks, no nothing. He went out there and broke all his bones multiple times for us and for him. And you know what, Mr. T was a. I found him. Obviously, he was a bigger than life character, and he was, the gold silverware and gold chains and stuff. But he was also very positive and a kind of a role model as far as his other stuff, other than being an actor. So he was a childhood hero, and it's funny. I met him in the early '90s. I used to be really into comic books, and we went to a Chicago Comic-Con, and he was there signing, and I got my picture with him, and that's why I said silverware, because he had, on this time, he had a gold full-size knife, fork, and spoon on a chain. It was awesome. I have a picture back there, too. It's funny. I wasn't really into. I mean, I liked football when I was a kid, so I don't really think there was Nailway, back in the day, because I was from Colorado, so I was a Broncos fan from a kid, just because I think proximity.
Yeah.
But anybody else would have been Han Solo, Not that that's a hero.
I might have thought of that one, but you got me with Mr. T. You could have given me 100 guesses, and I would not have picked Mr. T for you.
That's a weird one, and it's funny. I met him twice. So I met him in Chicago, and then I got a picture with him, and then he in Toledo he was refereeing the Tough Man contest. I don't know if you remember that thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Was that a regional thing? I guess not. If they had it in
it was regionals, and if I remember correctly, as you advanced, there was a national.
There was some kind of national, right? So we went and met him again, and then I had him sign my picture, and then I got another picture with another friend of mine, and he's like, as we're taking the picture, he's like, "Oh, look, a reverse Oreo," because it's my other white friend, and he's in the middle, and. Yeah, it was just he was great, and he was never off.
No, he turned 100% all the time.
Yeah,
always turned on.
Yeah.
Where did music start for you? Like when did music obsession start?
So, I don't know how I ended up with it. The very first record I ever got was Billy Joel, Glass Houses. I believe my dad bought that for me at a record store when I went and visited with him in Colorado. He was living in Colorado and we moved back to Ohio. I went and stayed with him. He bought me a record. And so that's where it started. And then shortly after that, Kiss. The pageantry, Gene spitting fire and blood and, flying around in the rafters and just the whole thing of it. I mean, just like every other kid, most every other kid of our age, it was everything. I didn't have an older sibling to get me into cool music or anything like that. I had to find it myself. But yeah, it started with Kiss, and then Motley Crue kind of helped there too. Soon after, and I have an Ace Frehley tattoo, just like Dimebag. Kiss.
That was the hook for so many people, guys our age at that time.
I mean,
you couldn't go anywhere in the mid 70s without seeing Kiss.
No.
And I remember being allowed to stay up late on I think they were on, I don't know if it was Carson or one of the late night shows. It's one of my earliest memories, is being allowed to stay up late to see Kiss on, Tonight Show or whatever.
Yeah,
And
so
then it
good.
came on, and it was not Kiss. It was like an imitator Kiss. And I was so dejected. I was like 4 or 5 years old, maybe. It was like 76, 75.
Wow.
72. So I remember that. And then not long after that, staying up to see them on another show, and it was them. And it was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and then seeing the Phantom of the Park or whatever, and it's a horrible movie,
Kiss
but
Meets the Phantom. Yeah.
it was
the
Kiss and
worst.
movie, so it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. And then for me, it graduated to Van Halen, and there was a long Van Halen obsession. And then I kind of had a duality going on where I was still obsessed with kind of the real the Eddie Van Halens of the world, the real players and artistry of it. But I also had this total punk rock. Started getting into punk rock through skateboarding when preteen and into my teen years, and went all the way in that rabbit hole at the same time. So I kind of had both going on. What was your first show you went to?
First show was Motley Crue on Theater Pain.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, Theater Pain, and Loudness was opening.
Oh man. Loudness. So good. Well, just to let you know by how many miles you beat my first concert. My first concert was at the Charleston Civic Center in West Virginia, and it was Eddie Rabbitt was the headliner with Kenny Rogers and the Oak Ridge Boys.
Now, if my mom would have taken me to a concert, my first concert, it probably would have been that one. Because she loved Kenny Rogers.
My mother took me to that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to go to that concert alone, which I can't believe my mom let me go to that, because I was 14, something like that. I don't remember what year it was, but she let me go by myself. Yeah, I lived through it. And it was awesome.
So would you consider, was that like your first, I've referred to it before. I know what my kind of hooks were. Like the first show that I saw that I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is in the live setting, seeing a band play that I was just like, why would I ever want to do anything else with my life? Like that is what I want to do.
I've never really thought about it as like a moment, but I think hearing you voice that question, I think that must have been it. Seeing the everything from the kabuki, dropping and whatever, because yeah, it was an arena show, but it was Toledo Sports Arena, which was AAA, third tier down from the Red Wings, 6,000. Not a huge one. No,
Yeah.
not Cobo Hall, that's for sure. But yeah, I think that was it. That I was like, this is the coolest thing that a human can do. Well, I guess that an astronaut, but
Yeah. Well, we have to have
being an astronaut.
we have to have realistic expectations.
Yes. If I somehow managed to be good at guitar, I could do this. So I think
that's when you started playing? Not long after that?
it was not long after that I got to, that was probably middle school. So in a year or two after that, I got to high school. I took an art class with a friend of mine, became our bass player, and we were just total jackasses together in that class. But we just decided that let's start a band, and we each started playing guitar and messing around. I had a mandolin, my grandfather's mandolin in the garage, which probably had 2 strings on it, but we, I can't remember what stupid song that we first, I think it was like a Kiss 80s song. I can't remember the name.
Dynasty era?
No, after that, actually. Unmasked or something, Asylum or Animalize or some, maybe Creatures of the Night. I can't remember what song, but it was like one string kind of like, hey, that kind of sounds like that song. And then we just kind of messed around. He got a guitar, then finally I got a guitar, and yeah.
And then here we are. a room full of them.
Here they are.
A lifetime of string changing.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you gig in high school? Did you play shows? Like I remember the first band that I actually managed to put together practices and rehearse, and we played at the 8th grade talent show at my middle school. We had to come in and try out. We played at 7th and 8th grade, now I remember correctly. So 7th grade, we come in and try out in the gym, and it's just an echo chamber, and I've got my 82 Squire Strat and my little Fender Sidekick Reverb 25. I had no idea of tone. I just turned everything all the way up and played Hendrix's version of the Star Spangled Banner. And
by yourself?
The gym teacher, oh yeah, well with the band was there, but that was our intro, was me playing the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh.
I figured that would get us points because it was like patriotic or whatever. And
Right.
he stopped me and he's like, "You guys are in as long as you turn it way down." Okay, cool. And then we closed the whole, talent show. It was a bunch of people doing actual talents.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
were the only band. And then we played Star Spangled Banner and I think Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin and Purple Haze. And I remember our drummer, he was a freshman in high school, so he was like, an old guy. And he had the old Lifesavers Vista-Lite kit, which I would give anything to have nowadays, But yeah, that was my first live gig. I was so scared, I thought I was going to spontaneously combust. I'm standing in front of the whole school and have to play the Star Spangled Banner. And I kept turning my wah on and off because I couldn't control my leg. I was so scared on the wah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm so glad that nobody had cell phone videos back then. There's some pictures, but I can sell to you by looking at the pictures that we did good.
That's awesome.
So you moved to Phoenix. You were, what, 20, you said?
I was 25 when I moved there.
Oh, 25. I was listening real good. So did you gig around Toledo? Like, were you playing in bands around there?
Yeah, I was. So to match your story, I played in the talent show in high school. I went to Whitmer High School in Toledo. At one time, it was the biggest high school in Ohio. So it was a gigantic high school. Our auditorium was it was probably 3,000 people. Because they had like a decent theatrical. Yeah, this is good.
Terrifying.
This is good. Yeah, I got to show you this video. But we were one of 3 or 4 bands, and funnily enough, one of them, the other bands played Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin,
Of course.
and Radar Love, I think they did as well. Golden Earring. That was, by that point, I had gotten into Metallica. Metallica helped. Basically, I got to credit James Hetfield for my guitar lessons because back in the day, that right hand, learning, those first 3 records, that's where I cut my teeth in learning how to, downstroke pick and alternate pick and all that stuff. So, being huge Metallica fans, we did Seek and Destroy. And then we had what do you call that when you put a bunch of songs together? A medley. So we did a medley of some Slayer, some Metallica, different Metallica songs. And oddly enough, I wasn't that nervous. And I was singing and playing guitar at that time. I think I was just too dumb to be nervous, I was like, woohoo, yeah, we're going to do this gig, because up to then, we played in my buddy's attic, and then, so we do this gig, and the crowd goes bonkers. We are the last act of the night, the day. Midway through Seek and Destroy, the crowd all these kids rush to the front of the stage and start headbanging and it was full on rock show. You're not in school anymore. This was full on bunch of long hairs and, I'm up there with my acid wash jeans and my Testament t-shirt and my Charvel reverse headstock, 3-color crackle, it was bad, but,
That's so good.
But dude, it was
Instant stardom.
it was
Instant high school
amazing.
stardom.
It was like, I don't know. I mean, it was kind of meant to be because it was so good, and we were pretty good, we were tight with the, whatever, and I was decent, halfway decent singer, but I have a videotape of it, and I'll have to let you check it out one day
Yeah.
because it's hilarious. Yeah, so at the end of it, we start into the medley, and it was so out of control. They closed the big curtains on us. So I'm playing, and then all of a sudden I get hit by the fire curtains, and we're still playing behind the curtain. You can hear us like, keep going, and
We're not gonna stop.
so I not to be too full of myself, but after that I was like the coolest guy in high school, and
Oh yeah.
it was pretty awesome. Yeah. So
It's a simple it is a simple and tried and tested thing that if you pulled that off in high school, I don't care if you were the dude sitting at the table by himself in a corner of the lunchroom,
yeah,
you are instant and across all, types of people.
yeah,
From the burnouts to the jocks to
yeah, and that's
the
what it
pretty
was.
girls,
I was
everybody.
friends with all of them. I was a Dungeons and Dragons playing, football playing, track and field, wrestling, smoking pot, and being a delinquent. I hit all the bases on that. So I had
Yeah.
all kinds of friends, acquaintances. But man, I think that after that gig, I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to do
So
that.
maybe that's the show that put the hooks in you.
I was always already on my path, but after getting that taste, because we never played for anybody, you know,
Yeah.
uh, but to get that kind of reception, your first show in high school, not doing whatever, Mary Had a Little Lamb, yeah. So that
That
that was the one.
that's awesome. So like, I've talked about it on here. We, any crew guy, we all talk about this. None of us as a kid were, watching Eddie Van Halen or Kiss or whoever, whatever era you were in. None of us were watching all that thinking, I want to be a guitar tech. We all wanted to be the dude on stage. Make no mistake about it.
Yeah,
But for whatever reasons and circumstances, and we each have them, we end up on the other side. And for you, I know that part of your story is similar to mine. Like, I didn't get into being, mine was, I saw Grady Champion handing guitars to Dimebag in a club here in my hometown before Pantera blew up. And that was the first time it ever occurred to me, or I was even aware that that was a thing. That,
right.
like, I watched him, and this is the old school where he's doing guitar changes, he's riding all the effects during solos and doing, channel switching and everything off stage in a little, like, and it was a strip club on one side and an old 80s metal club on the other here
Right.
in Shreveport. And I hope to tell that whole story once I have him on one day. But I saw him and went, I want to do that. And a few years later, I was doing that. But in the meantime, I kind of adjacently got into doing stagehand work just because I needed money. And I know, was that kind of your on ramp into doing crew stuff?
It
And you
was.
started doing that once you moved to Phoenix.
Yeah, I did. So I had a band in Toledo, a couple bands in Toledo after high school, and we did the regional thing. Put out a tape, one tape, and then we had another band, and then actually three bands, actually four bands, because after high school, I, I forget about this band, but I was a lead singer for a brief moment of time, kind of doing hair metal slash,
Yes.
grunge was just coming out, so we did play Man in the Box, but
Pause for a minute.
okay.
I don't want to shortchange this at all. So I need band names. What were band names from the high school band on?
High school band name was Roadkill, and I had drawn up a laminate back in the day, and it was tire marks through like a puddle of blood.
That's so good.
Yeah. So that was high school. The first band where I was a singer was a band called Vanishing Point because I we loved that '70s movie. The band I was in where we the best probably in biggest band, not big, but for us it was big. Was a band we were called Fist. So Fist, yeah, and
It's tough.
tough. And then that broke up, and then we started with same couple guys, not all the guys, but we started a band called Pound, LB period.
Yes.
Yeah, we liked weed.
And because you were heavy too, right?
Because we were heavy, of course. Because we and our first T-shirt had so we just used generic shit. It was like the period from a analog typewriter, blew that up, that kind of circle thing, and it was kind of misshapen or whatever because the strike of the key, and then we just put the logo in the back, and on the back we had a picture of this guy Earl Hughes, who at one point was the heaviest man in the world. So he's this huge fat guy or whatever, and we put him on the back of our shirt because it was heavy. So
Because it was heavy.
so Pound, and then our last band in Toledo was a band we called a Chop Shop, and it was kind of an amalgam of another band and us. We had like 6 or 7 guys, 3 guitar players. It was kind of ludicrous, but I wish we would have documented more stuff from that era because we don't have any recordings of the songs. We don't have anything from live, so lost to the ages. And then after that, I moved to Phoenix. I moved in with my friend Jim. He moved out there from Toledo.
I know Jim.
Jim Chinney.
Yeah, lighting guy, right?
Yep. Still is. And he got off the road for a while and came back, and he's out with Chili Peppers now. So that's how he falls up the ladder.
Yeah. He did Hatebreed for a long time.
Yes, he did.
For a while.
Yep. So Jim and I have been friends since high school. He's one of my oldest friends and one of my best friends. So he would call me and kind of rib me about, hey, what do you, because we cut grass together because during those bands we all landscaped together. We all cut grass and smoked grass and how you do. So
that was mandatory for any stoner rock band guy. Was
I
to
think
work
so.
for a landscaping crew, right?
Not that we had
On the side.
big hits in the band Fist, but one of our biggest songs was called "Mowing Grass with the Gods." I didn't write the lyrics. Moved to Phoenix. Jim would call and harass me and be like, "Hey, what are you doing today?" "Oh, I just got home from work." "Oh, yeah." "Oh, I just got home from working a White Zombie show, at the whatever club out in Phoenix, and I helped them load their gear." Yeah. So he just kind of would kind of be like, "Move out here. Come on, you can do it too. You can make the same money as you're making back home cutting grass. Come to Phoenix." And we cut his mother's grass, and she would come out when we'd come around, and I talked to her, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'd move out there if I had the money." He's like, she called my bluff. She's like, "I'll loan you the money." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so then, in 1995, I was apparently moving to Phoenix. So I moved out there with, suitcase, one guitar. Moved in with Jim and his wife and 2 other roommates. So I went from living on my own at 17 to sharing a bedroom with 2 other dudes. Starting over at 25, but I moved out there to become a stagehand and try my hand and trying to dip my toe into touring whatever. So I was a local hand and LD at this theater. And then, like you said, watching Grady, I would help load in and set up, because I play guitar. Our crew boss would always kind of put me with the backline guys. So, I knew all about amps and how to do whatever, but mostly not maintenance and stuff like that. But I just started hanging around the guitar techs once it was set up and asking them questions, and some were cool, some were not, and they'd give you some tips or they'd tell you to fuck off, how that
I've done
goes.
both.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's how I got the bug. I started thinking, like, I want to go on tour, and I want to be a guitar tech. I mean, what else? I'm not going to be a lighting guy. I'm not going to be I play guitar. I should be a guitar tech.
If I'm not mistaken, and I didn't ask you about this ahead of time, but wasn't the first person you handed a guitar to George Lynch?
It was. It was.
Am I remembering that right?
You are, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was working at this theater, the Celebrity Theater in Phoenix. We have this
In the
production
round?
in the round, yeah, rotating
Yeah, I've been
stage.
there.
Yeah. So we had this production manager at the theater, and he used to tour, and he was a Dawkins tour manager at one point. So somehow he found out that I play guitar or whatever. Apparently George needed somebody local for a couple shows, and just local guitar tech stuff. And I wasn't really a guitar tech then. I was a dude that aspired to be and kind of knew, a couple things, but I didn't know anything about Floyd Roses and, all that. So, but yeah, so somehow he got my number, and at the house, Jim's wife answered, the phone rings. She answers. She's like, "Hey, Ian, it's phones for you. It's George Lynch." I'm like, "What? What? Get out of here." So I get it, and I answer the phone. Hey, Ian, this is George Lynch. Reed gave me your number. I was wondering if you'd come by the house and set up some guitars. I'm like, okay. Backstory being, when I started in high school or whatever, when I first started gravitating towards guitar and guitar playing, I fell in love with George Lynch. I loved his style. I loved his guitars. He had the coolest guitars. He had a pretty cool look. Kind of it was the 80s. That was a different time. But I loved his playing, and I loved his flair and his flash and whatever. And there was, he wasn't by the most technical or whatever, but I don't know why, but I just gravitated towards him. So fast forward to this, I drive over to George's house. Sitting in his living room with my little briefcase of tools, setting up the Tiger, the original yellow and black Tiger. I think it was the original. It sure seemed like it was the original. And what other one was it? There was Haji, which was his Lynch Mob guitar with the samurai katanas and the cobra coming up. That one was called Haji. So the original Haji I worked on. And then he had this kind of rainbow orange purple tiger stripe one that I think it was more of a Lynch Mob kind of style. So yeah, I sat in his living room, set up some guitars. I'll be outside, sunbathing or whatever. And then he came in, and my first ever protein shake was George Lynch made. Weird story. But yeah, so hey, Ian, you want a protein shake? I'm going to make one. I'm like, okay. I don't know what that tastes like. I don't know what that entails. Yeah, so George Lynch made me a protein shake. I set up some guitars in his living room. And then so he was starting a tour, Lynch Mob, but non-original members, except for one, I think. So he needed somebody to cover the first two shows in a little dump called the Mason Jar in Phoenix.
Oh, yeah. Been there.
Yeah. So I did two shows there, and that was totally a launch pad for my touring career, because after that...
Well, that's what I want to get to. Your first full gig, you did not start at the bottom of the ladder.
Did not.
You you
I,
started
I,
way at the top of the ladder.
I went directly to go. Yeah, I got very lucky. So when I moved to Phoenix, a stagehand friend of mine, Norm Costa, he lived with Kerry, and so I'd go pick up Norm for gigs or whatever, or we'd just go hang out or go shoot guns or whatever. So I'd go to Norm's to pick up, or Kerry's to pick up Norm, and sometimes Kerry would be there, and it was like, whoa, and I loved
Carrie, which Carrie are you talking about?
Kerry King from Slayer.
There, you,
I'm
there it
sorry.
is.
I, he lived with Kerry King, so I met him. Went to the bars a couple times with Kerry and Norm and whoever else, and I'll never forget one time I went over to pick up Norm, and Kerry was mowing the grass on a little riding mower. So I look out the back curtains, and Kerry's on a little riding mower with something covering his head, but all the tribal tattoos, and but he's out on there on his little Toro whatever. It was just funny to me. But long story long, it's funny, and it's a weird coincidence, but that same guitar tech that was working for George Lynch was also Kerry King's guitar tech on, and he was leaving the whatever Slayer tour, Diablos and Musica. He was leaving to go back to Cher, because apparently he worked for Cher. So he needed a guitar tech for Ozfest '99. And I was talking to him. He's like, oh, yeah. And Norm's like, oh, yeah, he did George Lynch. And Kerry's like, I remember this verbatim. Kerry's like, whoa, if you did George's stuff, you can do mine. And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I can. So, poof, I'm working for Slayer on Ozfest '99 as my first tour as a guitar tech.
First tour, no warm up shows or anything, just right to Ozfest.
No,
How puckered were you for the first show?
you know, I was more nervous the first time I showed up in Anaheim for rehearsals, because that was my first, like, here's the rig. This is your baby for the
Yeah,
next however long, you know. But I was way more nervous because I got to look like know what I'm doing, and I got to give this air of confidence and positivity or whatever. So and that ended up going fine. But our first show was that amphitheater in West Palm Beach. Bizarre. I mean, I don't remember being. I'm sure I was nervous because I still get butterflies, before the shows and stuff like that now. But yeah, I was surprisingly calm, just like I was surprisingly calm when I did my high school talent show thing too. I don't know
yeah.
what it is. I think I have it in me that I can put that aside and get on with what I got to do.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
So you start with Slayer, who, at least in our world, in the metal world, that's, it's kind of it it is among the highest peaks, so to speak.
Yeah,
And an intimidating band. Everything about them, especially back then, was so intimidating.
yeah, intimidating, brutal. I mean, there wasn't anything soft or luxurious about Slayer in any realm of anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it was cool meeting Carrie before, like on a personal level. So I already had that kind of thing. And, Tom was great. Paul Bostaff was playing drums from Forbidden, which I saw
Yep.
Forbidden back in the day. Anyways, but Hanneman. Hanneman is, I think that's where the brutality comes in with Slayer is Hanneman, because he's not outspoken, he's not whatever, but he's just like, you gotta impress Jeff Hanneman, or you know, I don't know, it's just, yeah.
Rest in peace. The few times I was around him, I was too scared to talk to him.
Yeah,
I tried, and I was just like, I'm just going to walk away.
is it me, or is it he's just an intimidating guy?
He was. I was only around him a couple times, and like I said, never did. I wasn't on tour with him, but yes, he definitely had. All of them had that energy to me because I didn't work, with them.
Right.
So anytime I was in the proximity, it was, your hair was standing up a little bit. At least mine was. But I also had, when we talked earlier about the shows that hooked you, I was at the first show of the Clash of the Titans tour in 1990. Opening night was at the old Starplex in Dallas, the Coca-Cola Starplex Amphitheater. And Alice in Chains was the opener. And nobody had ever heard of Alice in Chains. It was their first national tour. And so they play like in front of the curtain. It was weird. Like the curtain was closed and they played on like the front 5 feet of the stage with
the apron, right?
Yeah, on the apron. And then that
That's
night,
the way it was, too.
The lineup rotated every night. It was Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth. And it, different band went first and different band went last each night. So the night that I saw it, opening night, Slayer went on first. And I was in the pit, at the back end of the pit, like where the first row of chairs was, me and my buddy. And they came out to Hell Awaits. And so but they were playing the storming sound and the like raining blood sound. And then they start playing the creepy Hell Awaits intro over it. And real slow, Lombardo just walks out dead-faced and staring at the crowd, not smiling, nothing, and stands behind the drum kit. And then Hanneman walks out and just stands there, arms crossed. Kerry King walks out and just stands there, arms crossed. And then they start playing the long intro. And Araya walks out just in time to sing the first line. He landed at the mic stand. And my buddy tapped me and just pointed behind us. And I still get chill bumps talking about it because I turned around and the sun was setting. That amphitheater the stage faces due west. The sun was a big half ball sticking above the lawn. And the entire audience, people had taken their shirts off and lit them on fire and were swinging their shirts over their head. There were bonfires up on the lawn with big, huge circle pits going around them. I still have never experienced anything like that. I had tears running down my face. I've been to other shows. I talked on Clint's episode about seeing Tool opening night at Ozfest. I've seen others that brought me to tears. Nothing will ever touch the first time I saw Slayer in that setting, in their absolute heyday. So anytime I was around them at festival shows or whatever, I couldn't get close enough to them to say anything because I was a scared little kid. I'm like, that's Slayer, man.
Yeah.
They did this thing to me back when I saw them in Dallas. My life changed that night. It was still, and I took Lisette, my wife, didn't even know who Slayer was when we got married. Like, never heard of him. She grew up an Army brat, listening to pop music. I took her to Slayer's last tour when Lamb God was main support, and Anthrax and Behemoth, whoever else was on it. And I took her to Dallas to see the show, to hang out with Randy and the Lamb of God guys. And we went out to front of house to watch Slayer. And I tried to prepare her. I'm like, first of all, 2 things are going to happen. You've never seen anything like this, ever. Second of all, you're going to see your husband turn into a 16-year-old kid.
Right.
You're going to probably see me cry. You're going to hear screaming come out of my mouth that you've never heard. This is a whole new version of me you have not been introduced to yet. Don't be alarmed.
It's normal.
But I'm going to enjoy this. And I have a picture of her that I caught of her during the first song watching them play, and her face, she looks like she's seeing a ghost. She's like, whoa.
Yeah.
We were sitting with Jason Kane and at front of house, watching. It was great. So anyway, sorry I took over there. But just to kind of put, there are people who listen to this who are not in the music world. And if you've never heard of this band we're talking about, Ian started with caviar and champagne, at least not that the gig was easy. I know was not. But,
no, it wasn't. And we were all
started,
on us, too. So, but I mean, that was kind of cool too, hanging out with those guys on a bus and getting to know them as people. And I was a big Slayer fan when I was a kid too. So it was, to get my start guitar teching for George. And then on my first tour is for Slayer. I'm like, man, the stars are aligning,
So just to move along, because we got a long list of bands to get through and stuff to get through. I know in between there and when I met you on Sevendust a few years later, I know you worked for System of a Down, Monster Magnet, and then we met on Sevendust at the beginning of the Animosity touring cycle.
Right.
And I, of course, have been with the band, on the first record, and then kind of taken a hiatus to have my oldest daughter, Logan, during the second record. And had come back while they were recording Animosity, and then met you during rehearsals. And of course, I'm like, this dude worked for Slayer. Wow, I was impressed right out of the gate.
But Studios.
At Transcontinental Studios, Lou Pearlman was that guy's name?
Something.
The guy who put all the boy bands together, NSYNC and all them. He had a studio in Orlando where we had done the Animosity record, and I didn't work. I worked on the end, just the very end of it, doing some overdubs, and then fell right into rehearsals. And so what year was that? I guess that was in 2001. It was like in the late spring of 2001, if I remember right.
That sounds right.
Because we did some shows that summer, a couple little tours, and then the record was coming out right after 9/11. And not long after 9/11, because we were out, Clint and I touched on this, we were out had Drowning Pool when they had blown up with their the first big single. We were out doing a run with them, and when 9/11 happened. We had been in Manhattan, the band had done a bunch of press, and I think we did Conan O'Brien a few days before or something, maybe.
Yeah, I think we did.
Because the record was coming out soon, and or maybe it had just come out. I don't remember, but the band did a photo shoot on the 10th that morning on top of a building in the Lower East Side with the towers in the background. And there was a storm behind the towers. And of course, they did not use the photos after what happened. But we left like late morning from Sea Caucus and ended up, we're just checking into a hotel in rural Wisconsin somewhere for a gig in some little hockey arena the next day.
Exactly.
On the 12th, and when all our phones started blowing up. So, pretty early on, we went through 9/11 together.
Yeah.
On that touring cycle, and played on the 12th, because that's my birthday is September 12th, and I remember it's like, happy birthday. 9/11 just happened, and we're doing a gig tonight, and
yeah,
the show must go on. Who knows what whatever the promoter or the booking agent's selling point. You're doing this for the good of the people, whatever, just do the show. We got to get our money,
Yeah.
But not the band. I'm talking about the powers that be above them,
Right.
But those years with Sevendust were. It's so hard to describe to somebody, and I came into doing the job. I started teching in late 93, I think was my first national tour, and maybe early 94. And so I ever since seeing Grady hand guitars to Dimebag, I wanted my Pantera, so to speak. I wanted to get on with the band at the beginning and go through the whole deal.
Right.
And so Sevendust was kind of that band to me. I'd been there, not at the very beginning, but halfway through that first touring cycle, I joined them as they were kind of on the rise. And the level of production that we tried that we were. It always seemed like we were stepping a few steps ahead of ourselves, like carrying a little bit more than we should have, trying to shoehorn, a 10,000 seaters worth of production into a 4,000 seat venue. And, that always it fell on the crew to a large extent.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily, we would be doing big rooms that justified carrying all that gear some nights, but then like what are some of the venues? The next night would be at the Chance in Poughkeepsie, or the Chameleon Club in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with the Amish buggies going by. I still think about that place. When we would see it on an itinerary, you're just like, are you insane? The stage was the size of a bathroom, and it was in the middle of the club, where the people coming in the door had to walk right by the stage, and we were carrying a 53-foot truck full of gear.
You were guitar teching from the barricade, handing John guitars, from the
over
barricade.
The monitors.
I was in the back room because there was the only pathway to backstage was stage right, so there was nowhere for me to be. So I was back behind, listening to the show. Oh, and oh God.
Yeah. So you never knew, and and I say, this is all well and good. You got to make money. You got to fill in the dates between the bigger shows, and I get it. I got it then, but it was. I wanted so badly, and I know I'm not speaking just for me. As a crew, we wanted to be the best at what we did. And we all cared so much about our jobs. And, we all got disgruntled at different times. Some crew members more than others. And, over the years, we had some squeaky wheels along the way. But as a whole, we wanted to do good for our band every day.
Absolutely.
And we were all committed to that. But it's so, to make it work and to make the money work when you're spending that much money to carry the production they were, and for them to be able to go home with money in their pockets and pay all of us, we had to, we did, I think I mentioned in Clint's episode that talking about doing 250 shows, I was talking about a minimum of 250 shows a year. And if you think about that, you're not home, because you got to add off days in there. And, you might be getting a couple breaks a year of a week to 10 days, and that's it. And you're gone the rest of the time, and you're physically exhausted. And we were all on one bus, and there was a lot of partying. And, this isn't about, it's just, we were all growing up. I happened to already be sober, so I wasn't partying or partaking at all. But pretty much as a whole, the crew, we got to work every day. We got to get up and go do load in and make the show happen. But the party never stopped. I remember a lot of nights us sitting out beside the bus, on the sidewalk. We would finish loadout. We've just worked a however long, 12 to 16 hour day. The venue is too nasty to shower in. You're filthy. You fight your way in the bus to put your bag in your bunk, because there's a bunch of people partying on the bus, and you look to see if your after show food, which you personally ordered, is even still there. if somebody's friend ate it, and you grab your food and you eat your meal on the sidewalk. It was not what was on the brochure. I'll just say that.
No.
It wasn't what was sold to me as, look at this glamorous lifestyle.
The glamour. Look at the glamour.
Look at the glamour. And we would talk about that a lot. And we kept each other sane through a lot of that.
Absolutely.
We helped each other avoid fights, or the days one of us were particularly exhausted with everything. The other would be like, all right, man, let's just make it through today. Try to get a good night's sleep tonight.
Right.
And we'll fight again tomorrow.
Yeah, there was some, a couple of those Sevendust years, we were gone 10, 11 months out of the year. And no home life. Like you said, the venues or the tours, it would be, huge hockey arena in the Midwest, but, a chance to the end of Poughkeepsie, or that one in, Clifton Park, What is that?
Oh, the Northern Lights.
Excuse me. Northern
Northern
Light.
Lights. It was like an old restaurant or something in a strip
Yeah.
mall
And it would rain in there because when you get
from the
that many
humidity. Yeah.
bodies sweating in a corrugated steel roof, it would
Yeah.
start dripping from the ceiling. Oh boy! But
Good
yeah,
times.
we did hit it so hard in those days, and with a band like Seven Dust, that's what they had to do to make money. So
Yeah.
whatever.
And man, did we get better at our jobs during that time, you know,
Absolutely. I mean
in
that
all areas.
that that those years for me formed me into kind of your troubleshooting and your just how you, I mean, even just walking in the venue, like, where the hell am I going to set up today? You know, how do I make this work? Okay, the man monitors, blah, blah, and then, and that was like day to day thing where, we didn't, we didn't know all these venues by heart. And, or
Yeah.
at least I didn't. And just having to figure it out every day and, make
Make
a
do.
memorable show for the kids to go home and remember that that was the greatest show they've ever seen.
Well, eventually you accept the fact that no matter what, no matter how ridiculous the circumstances are when you walk off the bus in the morning, or whatever you're up against, local crew not showing up, or whatever it is. I remember a venue in Rhode Island where we had to put a chain motor attached to a timber across a doorway at the top of concrete stairs out front to drag the Yamaha 4K console up the stairs on 2x4s sideways,
That was
like
in Delaware. I
Delaware.
remember
That's right.
that gig.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So whatever ridiculousness you're up against, or the gig in Scotland where they still carry all the gear up 3 flights of turn
Barrowlands.
back stairs. What's it called?
The Barrowlands.
Barrowlands. Yeah, I couldn't remember. The first time I saw that, I was like, "You have got to be kidding
Right.
me!
Right.
Just do shows somewhere else."
Right.
But whatever ridiculousness we were faced with, you eventually accept the fact that no matter what's the call sheet say? 10 o'clock or 9:30 is
Go time.
rolling. House lights, intro, and the show's happening.
Yeah.
So you can either complain about it or you can figure out
Yeah.
how are we going to get there.
Because at the end of the day, that is all going to happen, no matter what. Like all the things you said, venue people starting fights with our crew over something in Georgia, or
Yep.
just all the
That was on my birthday too. That was the day after Johnny Cash died. Johnny Cash had just died,
exact
and we recorded the whatever acoustic Seven
south
Dust
side
live.
double wide.
Yeah, Southside Double Wide. That's it. We recorded that in Athens at the Georgia Theater, and our sound man at the time, I won't say who, but yeah, got the local sound guy decided to just go completely lost his mind and tried to attack him, and
Kicked him
yeah,
out of the
that
venue,
was
and I think he kicked me out of the venue too. Like,
yeah,
how are we going to have this show if we don't have a front of
yeah.
house and another guitar tech?
We were recording a live DVD that night. It was a big
Right.
deal. It was a live record being recorded. Spoiler alert: our sound man and Ian were both allowed back in the venue, and I think the local sound guy maybe wasn't
Yeah,
until the next day.
I think he
But
got.
at least he got a paid day off. But just to think about the list of guys, crew, from tour managers, production managers, front of house engineers, monitor engineer, lighting guy, the list of crew that worked for Seven Dust between 1998, 97, 98, and I left them in '04, and up through that next few years, and even till now, they've had some incredible crew with them in recent years. But the list of people and what their resumes turned out to be, Seven Dust served us extremely well. It was like going to a good grad program and getting a graduate degree
Right.
in how to do our jobs
How to make
because of
the
the
job
opportunity,
happen.
how to make it happen. And, that list of people have gone on to, got one that's tour managed Metallica, one that's on the management team for Metallica, and a bunch of other massive artists. And, house engineers for everybody from Timberlake to Janet, you name it, other artists you've worked with. And it's Sevendust for they don't get credit as a band for how good they are and how many other artists they influenced, but the side of that nobody knows other than the crew community is the crew members that they churned out because of it. I'm not even saying it was the most difficult gig ever. It was difficult, but it was a great opportunity for a lot of people, and they toured so much. I did just under 1,000 shows with them, and there are huge bands that haven't done that many shows in a career.
Right.
And that was just my handful of years with them.
Yeah.
So it served a lot of us very well. And there is this alumni association of former I think there's a Facebook page of former Sevendust crew people that I've been invited to multiple times. I'm sorry, I'm not big on Facebook. I haven't joined it, but it's a staggering list of people that are in that alumni group.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it was easily one of the hardest working bands in rock and roll or metal or whatever else, and for them
across any genre
to be still relevant now. I'm and still putting out records, still touring, albeit not as much as the old days because. Thank God we all get old, and they've got families now and stuff like that. But those five guys are awesome people, and I consider them all my brothers because I mean almost 5 years that we put in with them, it's like when you work for a band, there's like always the one guy that's always like. I just don't get that guy, and I don't know what to say to him, or I can't conversate with that guy or whatever. But with Sevendust, it's like we were all good buddies.
Family.
Yeah, family. Just
we were family.
Making it work. Making the rock action happen.
And I had the experience of having both my daughters while working for them, and within like a month of having my oldest daughter, Morgan and LJ both had their oldest daughters, and like we went through so much of life together, and those, I talked about it on Clint's episode, those connections that are made don't go away. No. So from two old, if any of those five guys are listening, or any of the other crew out there that we shared, nights with on that Sevendust bus rolling down the road, from two longtime Sevendust guitar techs, a tip of the hat to that band and that organization for what you did for me. And I know Ian feels the same way. Every gig I took after Sevendust, including all the film jobs I've had, I have been less intimidated and better prepared because of the time I spent with that band.
I agree.
I grew up a lot working for them, and I'm forever grateful to them as people and to the band as a whole. So to move on, and that's enough of some of the old Sevendust crew people might give us some shit for blowing them up like that, but that's okay. Whatever. I'm old. I don't care. Nope. So from Sevendust, I know you ended up you filled in for Staind for a little while for me, for Mike Mushak. That's who I ended up going to when I left Sevendust for several years. But then you made this jump, and I want to get into your other world of doing, big time pop music, because I know in that gap you did Alter Bridge, and I'm not sure of the chronology. It's not that it matters a ton, but your first jump into the pop world was doing Ricky Martin, right?
Correct. Yeah. 06, maybe? I don't even remember how I got that gig. I don't remember because it was way out of any realm of anybody I knew, or it's not like I knew somebody on the crew. I don't know how I got that gig.
I would get random calls towards the end of my, I quit teching full time in '07, and I remember getting calls a couple of times, and I do not remember his name, but we had a front of house guy with Sevendust briefly who also was a production manager, and he did Janet Jackson, and like back in the early 2000s. And he called me several times, like she was cranking up and doing rehearsals, and then ended up not doing the tour. And thankfully, I passed both times, but he called me to do Janet a couple times. I got called to do Prince, 2 different times, but it came through Viggy, because we were connected through Viggy, and Takumi, I guess, reached out to Viggy or somehow, or Viggy knew it was open. And in the same thing, we never knew if Prince was actually going to tour or just rehearse for a month and then call it off.
Right.
And I passed on those. But usually they came through connections from the metal world. And that, any pop calls I got did.
Yeah, that had to have been where it was from. Somebody I knew, production manager I knew, got a call from another production manager, or whatever, because who was the production manager? Mark Spring was the Springo was the PM on that, and I never met him before that tour, but it must have been a friend, an associate. It could have been an Opie thing, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. But yeah, Ricky Martin. It was,
and pretty quickly behind that, or around that time period, you did Beyonce as well.
Yeah, well, I think Beyonce, it's weird how those connect. So our drum tech on Ricky, the original drum tech left to go do another gig. The guy they brought in to fill in has worked for Beyonce for a long time, so that's kind of how that dot got connected. Those dots got connected. But yeah, they were, it was a lot different. A lot different from the, Ozfest, and like you were saying, the bonfires on the hills, and, because
None of that.
we went on at like 5:30 on Ozfest with Slayer, so it was like, just becoming dusk or whatever, and yeah, by the end of it, and especially when they got into Angel of Death, it was total chaos, and sitting on the side of the stage watching that every night, I guess I kind of became complacent, but man, like you said, powerful stuff. Just being around that, just, working for a band and whatever, because we all kind of think it's us, it's our show, even though we're on the sides and we're just tuning strings and we're not playing guitar, we're not playing drums, we're not doing, but we're part of that show and helping them do that thing, and just,
There's absolute ownership in it. You get a little piece of ownership,
Yeah.
And I want to get into like where the stress and anxiety of the guitar tech job comes into a little bit later, but I want to blast through the rest of your resume just to put it out there real quick. I know that, you worked for Miles Kennedy for years with Alter Bridge, so he also did the stuff with Slash and the Conspirators, so you toured with Slash, I know, quite a bit with Miles.
Yeah.
And you did Godsmack for a little while. And then the other pop acts, you did Justin Timberlake, which was with another Sevendust alumni, Andy Meyer, mixing front of house, I know. And Janet Jackson for your first stint, the Neon Trees, Alicia Keys, and then most recently, I hope I'm saying it right, my kids know who it is, SZA.
Yeah.
And then now you're back with Janet again. And so in a general way, and you kind of already touched on it, just the difference between, almost from a crew guy's standpoint, the difference level in the anxiety or the stress of doing the job, and just the overall, I know at least in the metal world, it seemed like with most of the artists that we worked for, you were kind of more a part of the family. And I know that from other friends that have worked in the pop world, it's more of an impersonal thing. You're and not that I know all camps aren't like this, but it's more of an employee-employer, pretty black and white relationship.
Well, when you get on those tours and you're one of 135 people, like I was on Justin Timberlake, I'm a backline guy. Yeah, I'm working for Mike Scott, the lead guitar player, but I'm still one of 135, Yeah, it was more of a communal thing with metal bands, Because I mean, when you're on the same bus with everybody, you know, you can't escape it. You can't escape what talk about the show afterwards for hours. And it's not like escape like a bad thing. You're immersed in it. And
Yeah.
the shows, the records coming out, the videos being shot, the whatever, their
You
problems
were a
with,
part. Yeah.
yeah,
You
their
were a part of a
problems,
lot more.
yeah, their problems with management or their label or whatever or not problems. You're just in the mix on all of it. If you're sitting on the bus, stuff's going on, and it is more impersonal on pop tours, but it's fine. I mean, I've never been a pop fan, so well, I guess definitions of pop are different, but it's not like I was ever a Justin Timberlake fan or a Beyonce fan or whatever. So I don't expect to meet them. I don't expect to hang out with them. I don't expect them to make time to come talk to me or whatever. They have their life and we have ours, and I am hired to do a job and paid very well to do this job, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I know for me that I always say always, it was hard when you're so exhausted on tours, especially on long runs or with the bands we work for that did so many shows. But I always tried to stay connected to why I did it in the first place. Like, and the way I did that was different, different depending on the tour or the band or whatever. But I know I can tell you for the last 5 bands I worked for, spots in the set where I tried to plan all of my work and everything during the set where I had a minute or two to be still during a certain song and just be present, And when you were talking about like being on the side of the stage for Slayer every night and almost getting complacent with that, we all do that. You're doing a job, but
Yeah.
I would try to connect with it at some point every night. And some nights I didn't have to. Some nights I would be busy. And a couple of examples, I did a lot of shows over the years for Kenny Wayne Shepherd, the the blues guitar player. And he's such a phenomenal talent. But when you're, in his work, teching for him is almost like a vacation compared to the gigs that we did in metal, where you're doing all the effects switching off stage and you're doing a guitar change every song, and it's the energy level is completely different. The blues shows, Kenny is so good. He has the best gear. He never breaks anything. And so I would totally zone in and be lost. He plays this slow blues every show, and I would literally just let myself stop what I was doing and listen to the solo. This
'Cause you had
8-minute
time.
solo. Yeah, because I had the time. But I also did that with Sevendust. There were points in the set when I would stop and like, be here. Look at the crowd. This is the dream that you wanted to, you committed to this years ago, and there was a reason you were inspired to do this. This is what you wanted to be a part of. Stop and take a minute. And, I remember when I was with Stained, and like I wasn't the biggest Stained fan going in, but there were points, a couple of points in the set, that there were a couple of songs that I would catch myself and like being emotional. I'm tuning a guitar because I didn't have any time off on that gig. You're doing it's a full sprint on about it was back then working for me.
Yes, it was.
You did not. You came and filled in for me on that. It was
Woo!
a lot,
It was
and
a lot.
I didn't have time. But even while I'm doing my job, I would catch myself singing a song and have chill bumps and have that connection with it. And it helped me to do that. I always thought I would struggle if I was working for some artist that I wasn't into or that I didn't connect with. That was, I got out before I would have ended up on the pop tours or country tours because that's the natural progression as you get older, I think.
Yeah.
But
You get more money and they treat you better. So, and we're getting older. Those American metal festivals and European metal festivals, and then all the same exact venues.
Yeah.
some are still around. And it's like, I mean, like, man, I can't go back to the machine shop when I'm, 52
I know.
and
I
gig at the
know.
machine shop. Love
And
that.
listen, no disrespect to
No,
anybody. If it's on your itinerary right now, God
no.
bless you, and go make that money or go do that gig and make those people happy.
But we've
I
been there.
understand, but we've been there. So to move this along, I I hope it's the same for you. I hope I'm not the only one. I don't want to feel totally bonkers here. But to me, I had, how you have nightmares, just regular nightmares. Some people have had a recurring nightmare over their life. When I started as a guitar tech, I started having, and it was always the same dream, a gig nightmare,
Big
and
mare, yeah.
a gig mare. And my gig mare was very simple. I would be in a nondescript arena bathroom, like one of the huge men's rooms with like 10 or 12 urinals and 5 stalls, and it
Right.
was packed with a line of guys waiting to get to the urinals. And I have got my entire guitar rig still in cases, lids on, and guitar coffins, everything, like just off the truck, lined up in the bathroom. And all these guys are just looking at me like, what are you doing in here? This is how my gig mare would start.
Wow.
And on my walkie, I just hear chaos, like people calling my name. And then you hear the roar of the crowd because they've killed the house lights. And whatever band I was working for's intro music would start playing.
And you're in the bathroom with your guitar rig unpacked.
And I'm all the way across the arena. Like I have to get down 3 flights of stairs with 14 cases and get everything out, set it up, change string. I have to do a day's worth of work
Right.
instantly, and then
Yeah.
I wake up. That that was my gig mare. But I'll give
Wow.
you a second to think about either sharing your gig mare if you had one, to show solidarity with me, being vulnerable and telling you mine.
Yeah.
But and also to piggyback on that is real life gig mares, and like one that may have happened in real life. And I'll share one of mine. It's the one that usually comes to mind as the worst gig I ever had. And I probably did, I think, close to 3,000 shows in my career. And this one in particular was 1997. I was working for Anthrax, and we were main support on Pantera. And we were in Salem, Oregon. I remember I had the flu. I was super sick, just miserable. And on that tour, we set up right in front of Pantera's backline. And
Sure.
then my Guitar World had to be right in front of Rex's, excuse me, right in front of Rex's cabinets. So I had this long, skinny Guitar World, and I've got the guys' rigs with the boats on top of them, and I was teching for Frankie Bello and for Paul Crook, was the lead player at the time. And then there's scrims in front of the cabinet, so I can't see anything once I'm back there. And in that set, Frankie, they played the song "Got the Time," and it starts with like this long bass intro, like a bass solo
Oh yeah.
essentially, and
I
he
know the
he
song
kind of
well.
turned it into this little bass solo. So it started. He went way out on a thrust, like out in the crowd, like, on this thrust way off the front of the stage, and it would be a blackout, and then all of a sudden, boom, 8 spotlights hit him, and he starts the solo.
Right.
Well, he goes out there, and I'm tuning Paul's guitar, and about to hand it to him, and I'm like, God, Frankie should be playing by now, and it was this long pause, and I got that sinking feeling in my gut, and the next thing I knew, Frankie's standing right there screaming at me, what's going on? I got nothing. He went out there to start to play, and it was just, he's playing air bass.
Error.
Nothing. And,
Oh,
so immediately you go into hyperdrive. And, thankfully, Paul Crook, who I was, also teching for, he's standing right there. And Paul, in his own right, he got the gig in Anthrax. He had guitar tech for them, for Danny Spitz
oh wow.
earlier on. and he was this total shredder. He had actually teched for Blue Oyster Cult and a bunch of other big bands, like, and I think worked at Spectre Bases for a while. Like, so I've got this, thankfully, this incredible resource standing right next to me, but immediately he kind of turns the rig and starts looking at the back of it, and I'm looking at the front. Where do you start? Where's the signal start? Wireless. And I'm looking at the wireless, and Frankie's playing, and the lights are dancing. You know, I've got input there, so I immediately go on down the chain. And, you know, it felt like 2 hours, but in the course of about 45 seconds, I've worked my way through half the signal chain. And then Grady shows up. Grady is over there getting ready for his set, Dimebag's tech, and he sees across the stage and knows, oh, the song should have started. What's going on? And looks over and sees us. So he runs all the way to stage right. And Grady is like a bull in a china shop. He's not very, you know, finesse in his handling of things, especially in this situation. So he kind of grabs the whole rack to turn it, and when he does, it all of a sudden there's bass. And in the meantime, the first thing I did was once I saw that I had wireless signal, but it wasn't leaving there, I immediately had an AB box and tried to hand Frankie a cable, and he was like, no, like, just, I think he just threw it on the ground. Like, no. So to add to the panic of everything. But in the meantime, when Grady hits it, it comes on. And so Frankie just takes off out to the front of the stage and starts playing. And we moved, you know, I give Paul his guitar, and the show went on, and we made it through. But what had happened is that he had like the first Sony wireless ever made. It was, you know, World War II era Sony wireless unit. And there was a mute switch on the front of the unit that I didn't even I don't even know that I knew that it was there. I'd never used it. It wasn't, I muted in other ways. It was not something I ever utilized. And it had an LED light above it to indicate if it was muted, and the LED light was burned out. So somehow that mute switch had gotten hit during that, you know, either Frankie had bumped it, getting his water or towel off the top of the rack, or I had inadvertently hit it or something. And when when Grady bumped it, it came back on. So very long story, a little bit shorter. Show finished and it was fine. But the whole rest of the show, yeah, I wasn't looking Frankie in the eye. I'm terrified. And the show ends, and we get off the deck and pack everything up and get the truck loaded. And the whole time I'm just sick, thinking I got to walk. You know, Frankie, his routine, if I remember right, is he would go shower right after the show and then usually go to the bus to chill out for a while. And the Anthrax bus was like a library. The way I remember it, it was always quiet, and there were no guests on the bus, and he would go sit in the bus after the gig. So I finished loading the truck about 3 songs into Pantera's set, and I've got to go put my bag on the bus, and I was just like, I knew I had to face him, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take it like a man, you know. And I walk in the bus, and he was sitting at the front lounge. I think he had a book open and had just eaten. And he was just sitting there. He didn't even look up at me. And I walked past him to my bunk and put my bag away. And I'm like, hey, here we go. And I come back out, and I stopped like in front of him, like, go ahead and let me have it. And he looked up, and he was like, what's up, man? And I said, I'm so sorry. And I start trying to explain what happened. And he kind of looked at me like, what? And he goes, oh, man, don't worry about it. No, it's fine. You did a good job. I'm glad it is. Yeah, whatever it was fine. He goes, I'm sorry I yelled. That's just, you know, I'm like that on stage. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I went inside. But that was the worst gig I ever remember having. So did you, 1, have gig mares, and 2, what's your worst actual real life one that happened?
Well, the gig mare that I seem to have a lot of is, I don't know where it comes from, but we're gigging on this beach for some reason. Yeah. And the show is like near the water, I guess. And I mean, I don't even remember there being a stage, but I remember my Guitar World being a 5-minute run from where the actual, gig was, which I don't remember a stage in it, but I remember like, and it's all wired up all this way somehow, and there's some kind of issue or something, and I'm constantly running back and forth across this beach to get to the stage, and that's about it. There's no, I can't remember anything really after that, but it's just like I've never gigged on a beach. I've never done a show on a beach. But it's just weird, and it's that panic. Like it's either like something broke and something like your story wasn't working, or else I'm like you, the show's starting and all my stuff is inland, and I'm either pushing it through sand myself or, no stagehands around or whatever. But I think as backline guys, we probably all have, similar renditions of the same thing, where we're having trouble trying to do our thing. Either the earth is physically in our way, or people are in the way, or just weird. Yours is in a bathroom, mine's on the beach, trying to push a road case through sand. And yeah, that's the gig mirror that I remember having a few times. And then worst gig, there's a couple. One was with Sevendust when we did that New Year's show in Dallas at the Bronco Bowl.
Yep.
When Vinny's at the start of the set, I couldn't, for the life of me, I don't know what, I still to this day, I can't remember what happened or why it happened, but I couldn't get the bass working, and we had to wait and wait and wait, and, because we were on a schedule for New Year's, because Drowning Pool was gonna do their thing, stop at midnight, and let the things fly, and Gasoline had finished, and we were on stage, and I don't know what was up, and Vinny was mad. They all get fired up, if their stuff's not working, and I would probably be the same way, like what the hell, So finally got it working, and I don't know. We went on stage. What do you remember? Like 5, maybe 10 minutes late or something?
I don't. It wasn't my problem, so I don't remember.
Right,
Really.
right. Yeah. So
I think I remember coming over there and trying to help you, but at that point you just have to let the guy go through the signal flow and figure it out.
Yeah, because I mean, it's I put the rack together, so I'm the architect, I guess. Eventually, I figured it out. I can't remember what it was, but there was that time, and then briefly, I have a second one when I filled in for you on Stained. Stained were doing "This Love" cover of a Pantera song, and Mike had a whatever off the line Prestige, Ibanez, right from the shop, because I don't think they'd been doing that very long, and you got there was only
we
one.
we had been doing it, but when Grady was out, Grady is part of the reason I ended up working for Stain, because Grady was doing Aaron Lewis for a while,
Right.
and then left halfway through a touring cycle. So when we put This Love in the set after, as a tribute to Dime, we did it because Grady had Wavy, which was one of Dime's Washburn stage played, that was one of his main guitars. So Grady had that. So I set it up for Mike, and Mike played Dime's guitar every night on that song.
Oh shit!
So right before I left Stained, Grady had left Stained, and when he left, we had to figure out a guitar, so that I think we called Ibanez, and they sent out a Prestige, and that's why.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, but we only had that one. I walked into that gig and you had 26 guitars.
I think it was 26 or
Baritone
28.
acoustics, baritone Ibanez electrics, but it was it was probably what, at least three guitar,
There's three full.
three boats full, right?
It it was three 8 space boats, and then I had a couple single stands with acoustics.
Yeah,
And
baritone
yeah, it was
acoustics. I'd never seen a baritone acoustic. All tuned to stuff that I couldn't play a single chord on. Other
no,
than the standard, he had a Silverburst Les Paul in standard, and that Prestige was in a standard tuning. So he's out there playing it, does a solo, and pops a string. And I'm like, the only guitar I have is this Silverburst Les Paul. So I hand it to him, and he's, no, fix it. I can't do it on the Les Paul. I'm like, ah. So I'm like, I take the Les Paul because I don't have another guitar for you. But yeah, it was kind of heated, and Mike Mushak is one of the nicest,
oh yeah,
dudes I know, and you know, and you, I don't have to tell you, but he's such a
he,
sweet guy.
yeah,
Well, I guess maybe people might surmise is on stage, they're one thing, and then off stage, it's another thing. So it's like on stage is, you're in the trenches in the battlefield, and tempers run hot, and aggression is there sometimes. Somehow limped through it. I was trying to change the string on a Floyd Rose during that song, which was, I mean, that song's what, 4 minutes long maybe. So I didn't get back to him, but
yeah.
you know
And then
yeah,
it puts you behind, and then it snowballs for the rest of the set. You're out of your routine now. You don't have the
well,
guitars on schedule
mentally
for each song.
mentally you're all glitched up because like
Yeah,
and I'm thinking on stage being like, man, that guy sucks, and I'm sitting there, man. I mean, even though it wasn't something I did, it was
yeah,
something that happens. But that's why people ask why you got 26 guitars. Well, we need a guitar, a main guitar, and then we got to have a backup for that in case strings break.
yeah.
Strings, and especially on a Floyd Rose guitar where you're diving and pulling and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I same thing as you. I finish the sets, load it out, and then I'm like, I gotta go face the music. So I went and found him on his bus, and he's like, "Oh man, it's okay." Same thing. Just it's not a big deal. It's just I get, I'm in gig mode, and I was kind of assed up about it. I'm like, dude, you can't talk to me like that.
Yeah.
He's like, I apologize, and it's just the gig's going. It's high, high tension, high,
Yeah.
spirits, whatever, and he apologized, and I think he took me out to dinner on the next day off. It
There you
was,
go.
it just happens, and it's just, but man, there's nothing worse than that feeling once something happens like that. I mean, you with Frankie with all the spotlights, Jesus, that was
It
But
was.
then
It
again,
was.
Stained, a Pantera song, and the guitar player isn't on stage because he doesn't have a guitar.
Yeah.
That's not the greatest scene either.
It's a really unique, uh, you know, being a guitar tech. It's such a unique job. You're on this traveling circus,
Right.
and you're the only person on that tour that is uniquely qualified, to do that gig.
Right.
And just because you're a guitar tech, like, doesn't mean that you know that rig, that guy's guitars, that all of his idiosyncrasies, the little nuances of how he likes things. So it's not like if you get the flu or you've got, a terrible GI distress, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You have to be on that deck doing that gig
No
from,
matter what, there's no
from,
days off on tour. I
no,
mean,
there's
there's
not.
days off, but you can't call in sick. You can't, have somebody
Yeah.
sub for you.
The unique pressure of the job is, if you're doing it right, nobody knows you're there.
Right.
You don't exist.
Right.
But when something goes wrong, I don't care if you're playing in a club with 1,000 people or if you're doing a festival in Europe in front of 60,000. Every single person there is all of a sudden the entire thing is waiting on you. If
Well,
something
it
goes
feels
wrong.
like you're Frank Bello out there on the thrust with all the spotlights on
Exactly.
you. You're
Yeah.
like, you're sweating, you got your flashlight in your mouth, you're checking connections, you're looking at units, you're tracing the signal flow.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just feels like everybody's looking at you like, that guy's a loser, and you're like, no.
Yeah. But I mean, and the reality is, if you do your job, what we're talking about the 0.001% of the gigs where
Right,
this happens,
right.
but that tiny percentage is what keeps that anxiety in you for all the gigs where everything goes perfectly.
Absolutely. Because
It's
that
always there.
is like the waking gig mare is when gear's gonna fail, and you're always and
Yeah.
I'm trying to combat this, but you can't combat your brain, but I'm always on edge. Like, you got to kind of go through those scenarios mentally and be like, well, what if this happens? What am I going to do? And you got to have
Yeah.
kind of end results for all these different scenarios. An amplifier goes down, a rack unit or a pedal goes, or you have a intermittent cable somewhere, that you have to find, and all this stuff. And then you think about it a lot. I know
All the time.
all the time. You're thinking about what's going to fail, or it's gotten to the point after Clint had guitars, amps like blow up. We got a new Road King from Mesa Boogie for him to use, and it fried the diodes. And it's like I smell the rig, if something's going on, because you're engaging all senses trying to figure this out. And if you smell burning electrical, that's super bad. And,
Yeah.
Jesus, that was a gig too. So that amp went down, and I remember soldering diodes into this Road King amplifier PC board. Do you remember that gig in Niagara Falls where it was like 4 feet of snow, and we had to load the truck with a tow strap, with a ratchet strap, pulling each other up the ramp with
Because it was iced over. The
Oh
ramp
my
was
god!
iced
And we
over. Yeah.
got there super late because the roads were
Yeah.
bad. We had to throw it on stage and do that show. Literally, sound checked as soon as we got everything set up and just right into it. But I remember soldering that amp and like, what the hell am I doing? It worked after that. So, but the fear is always there. That what's going to happen next.
It's just a very unique job, and there's this fraternity of guitar techs that, we would all know each other. You don't get a chance, on the bigger tours with big package, tours with multiple bands. You get to hang out with some of your friends, but usually you're just kind of on your little island floating around, and the realization that, like, once you reach a certain level of doing it, and I don't know if it's the same, I would imagine it's kind of the same nowadays. The industry has changed a lot since I got out. The touring model's different now, and the not going to get into all that, how the bands have to make more money off the touring. They don't make money off their product anymore, and then the influx of the digital world. Now so many guys are using modeling amps, and that you don't require the skill set of the old guys like us to be able to take care of everything from a tube amp to a circuit board, or to fix a pedal, or to get
Yeah,
everything to communicate with each other via MIDI. All this
be able to
stuff.
solder. That's a rare one
Yeah.
nowadays. Like, what? You can solder? I'm like, well, of course I can.
Yeah.
I've made every cable in most of the guitar rigs that I put together.
Yeah. So just the way that it's changed, but back then it was the idea that I was in this really small club. You know, there were probably, a couple hundred guys on the planet doing it at the level we were doing it. And so there's the cool factor that comes with that. One question I've asked to people in a couple of different, whether it be film or rock and roll, is I know for me, it became my identity for years. Like the being a guitar tech was as much a part of my identity as anything, and there was the ego part, the cool factor of, yeah, I've worked for these bands and, that kind of ego stroke that you get. But the older I've gotten, because it's the same in film, I can put it on the same kind of ego mask with that as well. People are like, oh, you work with movie stars and all that. So is that something that you've kind of been part of your identity over the years for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially living in a place like Indiana, where nobody's really in the business here. So you're this oddity. Like, wow, you get to do that for a living. You travel to wherever, and you get paid, and they pay for your hotel room, and they pay for your travel. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm living my life for these people's acts. It's so in a city like this where it's not really an entertainment. It's not Nashville. It's not L.A. and most people have no idea what a guitar tech is. I have to explain it to them. I'm like, wow, really? You get paid to do that? I'm like, well, yeah. Everybody, you go out and see your favorite show. There's a slew of people behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and like we talked about, unless there's a problem. But all those acts need the support, and thank God, because it's taken me around the world multiple times and paid my mortgage and whatever else, and for 25 years. It's a rare job. It's a rare career, and I love it. It's amazing.
It makes for an interesting life,
Yes,
and just to, like, you and I getting to get together like this, just like I said at the beginning of the episode, these are all the things we bonded and connected through, in our time working together.
Yeah.
And unique. It is a very unique work environment that out of it are born a lot of just stuff you can't make up. You just couldn't dream up a lot of the things that circumstantially we got to go through together. Clint, our mutual friend that we've talked about a lot this episode from Sevendust, he used to he would ask people, if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be? And his answer, which I don't know that anybody could ever have a better answer. If Clint was allowed to have a superpower, he said his would be to make anybody he chose instantly have complete explosive diarrhea. That would be his chosen superpower, to instantly cause somebody to have explosive diarrhea.
Oh, that's
which I don't know how you ever beat that, but what would your superpower be if you could have one?
Right off the cusp, I think invisibility would be a cool one. I don't know why. I mean, in theory, it seems like, oh, that'd be a great superpower. But then now I'm thinking, like, what would I do with it?
Yeah.
Sneak around and not be seen? What? That's kind of
about
creepy.
it.
Never mind. I'm going to retry.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
No, you're locked in. You got to live with that one.
Yeah. The second one would be probably flying.
Flying. Yeah, you can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong with either one of those. I think mine would be the ability to stop time, and to slow down time in certain moments, because as I've gotten older, I have come to recognize when the good moments are happening. And most of mine are around, my kids and stuff like that. But even there's times at work, and I'm some beautiful location and there's a sunset and I'm like, I just want to slow this down right now and enjoy this. So that's kind of an old man answer, but I guess that's
But
kind
it's still a good one. I mean,
of,
yeah.
favorite riff ever.
Oh God, that's a tough one.
You can throw out a couple. I won't
Yeah,
make
yeah.
you stick with one.
Van Halen Unchained.
Oh, geez, yes.
That intro, I've always loved that.
That tone, that
Oh
recorded tone.
man,
It,
Eddie was
it's
the tone master, and it was all in his hands. And
yeah,
a certain modded plexi or not modded, I don't know. Symptoms of the Universe, Black Sabbath. That's a pretty good one. That's my favorite Black Sabbath record, Sabotage, because it's they got kind of weird, kind of psychedelic, it was getting into those times where things were changing. Second one would be along with yours, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I love National Acrobat as well. That's
yeah.
one of my all-time favorite Black Sabbath songs. Live Wire. Well, actually, yeah, probably the first time I kind of realized a rip and tone and it was Mick Mars. Too Fast for Love record and Shout at the Devil. His guitar riffs are so good and the tone is so good. But
Yeah.
like Live Wire, but I was thinking of Badlands. High Wire, is it? First
I think
song
so.
off of the first record. That riff is amazing, and I absolutely adore Jake E. Lee. He's
Yeah.
one of the most underrated guitarists out there, I think.
All right. This is the second jump cut edit in this episode, and hopefully you guys didn't even notice the other one, other than the fact that Ian's shirt changed. But it was now I've got on a whole new wardrobe. But I'm jumping in here because a couple days passed, and I went through and edited the episode and thought about a few things that we didn't cover. So here we go. One of the things that I've not talked about on here, but certainly was a huge deal to me, is that all or most rock stars want to be pro athletes. Most pro athletes want to be rock stars. So there was this awesome overlap that happened, and it was a huge deal when we worked for Sevendust, mostly because of Morgan Rose, who was the biggest, they call them green flies in the pro sports world. Baseball specifically calls guys like Morgan green flies because you're always trying to shoo them away. People that want signed bats and balls, and they call them green flies. But and I say that jokingly. We love you, Morgan. But Morgan has an incredible collection of sports
I can't
paraphernalia.
imagine.
It's like back in the late 90s or around 2000, 2001, his had a room filled at his house with balls and bats and helmets and you name it. So that was a great thing for me personally. I'm a massive sports fan, and specifically Chicago Cubs baseball and LSU Tiger football and Saints football. But being plugged into that world, and he had so many friends in pro sports, we got to go inside the ropes. We got to go to, if we went to a baseball game as a guest of a player, we're going early in the day and we're on the field taking batting practice with the team. So like over just the years with them, I got to go on the field at Fenway. I got to go to a game at Old Yankee Stadium. I got to go on the field at Wrigley and in the clubhouse. Dusty Baker, the then manager of the Cubs, walked through the clubhouse and smacked me on the ass. It was a huge moment in my life. So there were all these great sports moments, and I know you're a hockey fan. We did multiple. They were buddies with quite a few NHL players, and we went to playoff games and with the Lightning, and went to. I know a game in Toronto, and I remember other hockey games. So that was a great thing. And then working for Stain, got to do the Indianapolis 500 and the Daytona 500 in the same year. In that same year we did the Super Bowl. We didn't play the actual Super Bowl. We played a Budweiser party at Tiger Stadium, old Tiger Stadium in Detroit, in a tent in the middle of this field before they tore it. Now they've torn it down. But so
cool.
that was awesome. And I cut out one of the original seat backs with the big orange D on it.
Oh, man.
I cut two of them actually, and gave one to my brother-in-law who's from Detroit, and he's a huge Tigers fan, and he's got it framed, and I have the other one framed in my office. But anyway, all that being said, the people, that's something I don't know that people realize, that it was a huge perk to me being a crew guy, to get that, if the stars aligned, were on a day off, you were in a city where a team was playing and you knew somebody that was on, you could get that hookup and kind of get inside the ropes. But one other thing I wanted to bring up and kind of cram in here real quick is we lost one of our road buddies this year, Viggy, who was, he came in and worked with us on the seasons record on Sevendust, right? And Viggy, for people not in the music business, because I feel like everybody that was in knew him. So Viggy is this guy that was born he's from Lodi, New Jersey. He's kind of his name is Viggy Vignola, kind of not to be stereotypical, but he obviously came from a wise guy family. And he started in the business as a drum tech in high school. And the reason was, the way I remember it, somebody will probably email me and yell at me if I'm wrong, but his next door neighbor, or one of his neighbors, played in a wedding band as a drummer and didn't have a drum kit. But Viggy had this nice drum kit that fell off the back of a truck or something when he was a teenager. And his neighbor always wanted to rent his kit for these wedding things, or private parties, whatever he was playing. And Viggy was like, well, if you rent it from me, I got to come and set it up, and you got to pay me to do that as well. Which, if you knew Viggy, is beautiful. It's perfect that he was like that at that early of an age. So as the story went, that drummer ended up playing with a new up and coming artist out of the New York area, and Viggy was going and doing these gigs for him, and the artist was Whitney Houston. And so he ended up doing gigs with Whitney Houston early on, and Patti LaBelle. There was some connection to Patti LaBelle as well. So I came to know of Viggy through, because he was Tommy Lee's guy for a long time. But Viggy made his name by doing programming. He was one of the first guys to program drum loops and everything. And he had gone to work for Prince. Again, somebody will call and scream at me if I got this wrong, but he worked for Prince for quite a while and lived in Minneapolis and sat in a little closet, as he described it, editing drum loops all day for Prince, and then was back with Tommy and ended up with us. Well, there was a connection through Viggy to Tommy, and Morgan knew Tommy, and of course Tommy was like every drummer idolized Tommy Lee. Who didn't idolize him?
Not only drummers.
Yeah. And I had a connection a little bit. I had met him before because when I did Typo Negative, our keyboard tech was a guy named Les Paul Deal, and Les was Mick Mars's son, Mick Mars's son.
Right.
And so we were on a day off once with Typo in L.A., and he's like, hey, you want to go see it was first, you want to go to dinner at my house, and we went out to Pasadena and ate with his mom. And then we go to the studio, and it was the Karabi record was being recorded.
Oh, wow.
But at this studio, it was just Mick and Tommy. And we go in, and I had no idea. Like, I thought we'd see his dad, and we're sitting on the couch, and from the back room walks in Tommy and Pamela, and they had just started dating. So I had a little bit of a connection, but you and I were on a Creed tour with Sevendust as main support. We get to L.A.
Yep.
We load in the Staples Center, and Stapp had nodules on his vocal cords, the singer from Creed. And we all kind of knew that, like, this probably isn't going to happen. He couldn't even talk. But I guess for the insurance, and the statute of limitations has to have run out on this by now. Nobody cares anyway. But like we knew the gig wasn't going to happen, but we had to load in, we had to set up and do line check and everything. And right at doors, they pulled the plug. So we couldn't load out for hours because they had to wait for the crew to come back on, the local crew. And then we loaded out. So we're staying at the Grafton on Sunset. And we go to the, to the hotel, and the band pretty quickly, then they canceled the next show, which was like in San Jose. Then they canceled the next show. And the band, like the next day, is like, hey, we can't afford to sit at a hotel on Sunset in the middle of LA
Right.
for a bunch of days. What are we going to do? Well, Tommy was playing golf with Morgan and said, hey, just get bring the bus to my house. So entire bus and crew, we load up and go to Malibu and literally pull up in the driveway at Tommy's house. And we spent, I think, 3 nights there.
2 or 3.
And then we headed, it was 2 or 3 nights, and then we headed north. All I remember is everybody except me having a lot of watermelon martinis and laying around the pool. And he had a big, huge Ford Expedition with flames, ghost flames on it, that shot fire out of the side pipes, I think, if I remember right.
I don't remember that. Wow.
Maybe I made that part up, but he had a big Expedition because I drove it. Everybody had been drinking. He's like, we need to go pick up sushi. So I drove him and a couple people into Malibu, like to the coast, to some restaurant on the PCH, and picked up a whole bunch of sushi and brought back. And, we cooked dinner the next day for everybody. We grilled steaks, and I made homemade, like Southern mac and cheese. And so he called me Mac and Cheese for every time I saw him after that. He was like, hey, mac and cheese. I just remember us all sleeping like a bunch of kids at a sleepover.
Yeah.
In the big, like, theater room at his house. Yeah. Like you walked in, the couch was built down into the floor. You just sunk into the floor, and it had like couch backs and cushions everywhere.
Yeah, and like a bunch
I remember sleeping in there. Yeah, look over. There's you. There's John, half the band's in there. Everybody's just piled up in a room sleeping together at Tommy Lee's house. It was, if you'd have told me when I was listening to Shout at the Devil in high school,
yeah,
that I'd be, doing that, I'd have told you you're crazy.
Yeah, that was nuts. Staying the night there, and then he took us to play golf at the Malibu Country Club.
Oh yeah. And
you and I and some guy from Stained, I can't remember who he was.
Maybe Wasaki, the drummer, Wasaki.
Well, there was another guy that was like security guard or something.
It was Wasaki's buddy who was his security guy. Yeah.
And Viggy was the fourth. And, I remember Viggy, hitting the ball wrong or something, and he tried again, hit it wrong again, and then he either broke the golf club and threw it, or just threw it into the woods.
He threw it in the woods. I remember because we all played golf all the time back then, and if you're on a course with somebody, it's like their home course and you've never played there, it's pretty common for them to go, oh, I hit, I had a hole-in-one here on this hole, or I hit a shot here and, got an eagle. They're telling you good stuff. Every hole we got to, Viggy was like, I got a half a box of balls right there in that lake, or I got 3 irons in that lake and a broken driver over here behind the fence, This here is where we drove the golf cart drunk into the water. And Malibu Country Club, there were only a couple of hundred members. It was a really nice, exclusive.
I don't remember seeing anybody else out there when we were playing. It's been forever ago.
Yeah. I know that, obviously the majority of the people who are members there were either, studio executives or movie stars, and rock stars. It was not a bunch of dirty roadies. And I just remember that whole day. I have a big group picture from the end of that day, that has been on my wall for years, of all of us sitting outside the clubhouse there, and a picture of me and Tommy in his kitchen making dinner for everybody.
I have that picture too.
Yeah, and it's just. you can't make up some of the. I just wanted to bring up some of these, perks that I didn't necessarily expect that coming in, but amongst the hard work, there were all these great experiences that happened that, and you come home, and there were times I would come home from a tour and not even bother telling somebody like a story like that, like staying at Tommy's house, because they're like, what? No way. You didn't do that. And you're just like, okay, all right, sure.
Or there was so much other things that happened, that you don't get around to telling that one because of all this other whatever going on.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I know back then we would bitch and moan about a lot of the hard stuff. There were a lot of, Clifton Park, New York, Northern Lights gigs and Annie's in Albany and, the Chameleon clubs and all that. But there were also these incredible experiences that, and the same thing, being at some Euro festival, playing as the sun sets in front of more people than you've ever seen in one place. And, all these things you get to be a part of. I'm just so grateful for the experiences. I wish I had written more of it down. I also wish that I would have had a great, iPhone with the camera in it to capture so much of it. Because it was, I have entire European and world tours that I did that I don't have photographic evidence of.
Right.
Just because, I didn't carry a camera. So anyway, one last thing about our buddy Viggy. We were getting tattooed on a day off by our buddy Jeff Stump. And we were at, I think, Clint's house when he lived in Kentucky on a day off.
Oh,
and Stump set up to tattoo both you and I. He did both of our daggers that day. I have one that says "Keep It Simple" in my forearm, and doesn't yours say "Scotland the Brave"?
Yeah.
Yep. And the same day that we got those, Viggy decided he wanted to get a tattoo. And like Viggy had Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore on his hand, and he had a reset button on his hand. So if he really was having a bad day, you'd see him over there mashing his reset button, chuckling to himself, So he came up and he's like, what do you think about, he was bald, shaved his head. He said, what do you think about me getting an on-off switch on the back of my head? And I said, that's a great idea, Viggy, but why don't you have it say off and way off and have it in the way off position? Like as a joke. And he got it. He had a huge, big, massive throw switch on the back of his head that said
like
off
old
and
school, electrocuting the prisoner's switch. Go on number 2. Yeah, way off. I'm gonna get that tattoo in honor of
that would be a great tribute, man.
Man,
we
could do another matching tattoo.
All right, so to wrap this up, Ian, you're one of 2 people on the planet that I have matching bro tattoos with, and we got them in, I think the first one in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
We did.
Jeff Stump was the tattooer, and his shop was next door to Pierre's. Was that the name of that gig in Fort Wayne?
It's still there.
Yep. And you and I are both massive Clutch fans. And
we are indeed.
So we described and had Stump design a tattoo for both of us that we both have on our right leg, which is a tuning fork with a bus tire at the top of it, shoved through a skull with a soldering iron and a wrench crossed with a banner that says "I'm a rock and roll outlaw," and which is the tip of the hat to Clutch and to being Guitar Tech. So, buddy, I appreciate your friendship over the years. Thank you so much for proving my point when I picked up the phone and called you a few weeks ago. That we could pick up right where we left off, and thank you. I hope if anybody made it this far in this episode, I hope you connected with it somehow and enjoyed hearing 2 people reconnect after a bunch of years. And I hope maybe that inspires you to pick up the phone and call somebody in your life and reconnect as well. So I love you, buddy. Thanks for doing this, Ian.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and Right on. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, buddy.